Hello, everybody. Welcome back. YouTube.com/GeekLoud. It's Thursday night. It's 8 p.m. So, of course, I'm here on the couch for the Gaming Enforcement Agency. Thank you very much for joining me. Speaking of joining me, Bully's in the second slot tonight. Bully, there's been a catastrophe. What's happened?
Well, I think there has been a catastrophe. We had Unky, who was a withdrawal from yesterday, and we're going to try and slot Ace back in there, and he's had some rather excessive technical issues right on the death knell. So, well, eventually, it's only taken me almost 12 months, but I finally moved up to the second slot. So there you go.
Yeah. Next week, Bully, you're in the top slot, and I'm out of here as well. Great work. For all the viewers at home, allow me to talk you through the run of show, and it goes as follows. We start with games, interrogation, and deliberation. It is the 4 games, 1 TV show that we've been looking at, watching, playing this week. We'll go hands-on. You'll get some footage rolling in the right-hand box, I suppose, for you at home. If you're watching us live on YouTube, if you're not, you could, of course, be listening to us on podcast services of your choice. Hello, welcome. Please star us, rate us, review us there. That'll help. But you're missing out on fantastic viewing, so you should check it out on YouTube. Then, of course, we're off to the news segment. We're kicking in newsroom doors. Bully, how's your foot? How many news stories did you round up for us, mate?
I'm an old man. My foot's no good. That's why I've got the battering ram. I'm going to crack that one out tonight and get us through 6 stories for this evening.
Beautiful work, mate. Thank you very much. And then, of course, it's on to everybody's favourite segment. Unky Dunky has remoted in for us and given us a standoff list. Bully, can you please tell us the constraints for this evening's standoff?
Certainly can. So he's done us a bit of a favour there, even though he can't join us tonight. But the standoff today is the best doppelganger type game. So what do we mean by that? That is the best game that is copied or imitated another game. And just a little bit further to that, we're asking, did that doppelganger do anything better, or is in fact a better game than the original that it's copied from?
I love it. Everybody watching in YouTube land live can, of course, join us in the chat for audience interrogation, which is, of course, segment 4. But throughout the evening, Bully will be on patrol in that YouTube chat, flicking out the hot comments live, and we'll discuss them in real time. Another reason, if you're listening to us on podcast services, you should definitely check out one of these live streams at 8 p.m. on a Thursday night. Bully, are you happy to flick in the live comments and then, of course, round them all up at the end, any we didn't get to?
I certainly can. We've got a couple in there already, Tigaro and Sean Games, some of the regulars. So jumped in already and they're ready to go. So if you want to join them, jump into the chat on YouTube at GeekLoud.
Fantastic work. Thank you. And of course, Bully at Twitter. On Twitter, I should say, at GeekLoud there as well. Check us out by all means. But without further ado, games, interrogation, and deliberation. First up this evening, Bully has gone hands-on with Horizon Call of the Mountain in PSVR 2. This is, of course, the footage from Bully's Let's Play available on YouTube. Over to you, Bully. What are your hands-on impressions?
Played a little bit of it last week. I think I'd just got the VR 2 before we did last week's episode and was trying to basically get as much as I could through each of the games that I had available to me. So I only put a little bit of time in. I put a bit more time into it this week. It's still there's sections of it I find that are really enjoyable, like the combat with the using the bow and arrow, and it's probably a bit hard to see it on the Let's Play. But essentially what you've got to do is to pull your bow out. You've got to use your left VR controller, reach over your shoulder and touch one of the buttons while you're doing it. That draws your bow out. And then you've got to do pretty much the exact same thing with your right arm or right controller and pull out the arrow that you're going to fire. And then you basically use your it's not overly physical that you have to do it, but you have to sort of pull back or knock the bow and then, knock the arrow in the bow and then sort of pull back a little bit and let go and it'll fire off.
So that sort of stuff. Is it accurate? Does it always pick it up? Are there any issues?
Oh, probably 90% sort of accuracy. I've sort of found it's not. I haven't really found a situation, and especially in the early parts of the game, there's these little targets that you got to hit, and there's in certain sections, and they'll have maybe 10 in each section or whatever it is. Once you sort of start going through it and work out how the system works with doing it physically instead of just left trigger to aim and right trigger to fire like you normally would on a dual sense. Once you sort of work out the physicality part to it, it's fairly straightforward. And in terms of hitting the targets, once you've done fired off a couple of bows or a couple of arrows, again, I should say, and you sort of work out how it targets itself and where you need to sort of aim the bow, it's generally pretty good in terms of aiming and hitting the target you're aiming for. So I haven't really found any issues with that as such. Some of the exploring is good as well, and it's for anyone that's played any of the Horizon games, it's as dumb as this sounds, it's literally putting you in the game or in the world that you can see it first person and experience that sort of thing.
Can I ask you on that?
Yeah.
Oh, just on that, looking at this footage now and hearing what you've just said, it appears to me from watching your Let's Play that they've scaled all the humans down or the robots up. The robots in this version of the game look, I don't know, 20% bigger than they did and I know we're usually third-person perspective view over Aloy's shoulder. Do they feel larger in this version?
They do a little bit, not demonstratively bigger, but certainly, yeah, like the watches, those smaller ones that sort of alert the other enemies to your position in the normal Horizon games feel a little bit bigger than what you used to. But it's funny you mentioned the size of the humans because I noticed it playing, and I'm not sure if I noticed it in the VR one as much, and if I did, it probably wasn't that big that it was. It sort of stood out, but I've noticed that when you can see on the screen there you're going through a boat, so it's probably not the best way to see it. But when you're standing up against characters and you're standing and they're standing, they seem really short compared to everything else around you.
Yep.
And it's not just this game. I found it's the same with Resident Evil Village when I played that the characters, when you're standing there looking at them and interacting with them, seem really short compared to everything else in the world. And I don't know if that's my general play style with the VR is to basically sit on the end of my couch and do it from a static position. I haven't really gone into exploring it too much with standing up and seeing if that makes a difference to the scaling or whether it's just that's how it is and how they've designed it.
If I can jump in on the PC VR, like I've got a lot of PC VR titles. I've played a lot of games with humans in it. And I would argue you've got a 50% hit rate for implementation, regardless of whether you're standing or sitting. It seems to be a real, developer choice as to how they get the scaling specifically of the humans with respect to you. 50% of the time, I feel like they get it. The number one of nailing it for me was Half-Life Alyx on the PC VR. But then there's 100 other titles 100's over the top, 50 other titles where they do get the scaling wrong and they feel like all the humans in the game are too small for everything else in the world. So I just wonder whether maybe they haven't quite nailed it yet on the PSVR 2, mate. Back to you.
Yeah, quite possibly, and it's not so much that they, compared to your position on the screen and where you're looking, it's not that they appear really short compared to where you would be, or your eye level. It's that they're both you and where you're, from your perspective, and they seem really small comparative to the environment that you're in.
Yes, that's the exact problem. Yep.
Yeah, so again, it might be just a thing that they're sort of working through. And I know, the VR one for PlayStation's been out for a number of years, but the reality is, in terms of mainstream, and even if you're taking the Oculus and those sort of PC ones, the reality is we're still really in the infancy of VR in terms of
where it's the SNES, Super Nintendo level.
Yeah, more or less, because we've had mainstream video games for 40, 45, 50 years, whereas realistically for in-home VR, we've only sort of had the last 5 or 6 years, really.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that they're sort of still working through those little kinks and stuff like that. But in terms of taking that aside, in terms of the immersion in the world itself, it's absolutely amazing. And I think I mentioned in the Let's Plays that when you're sitting in that boat, you're not moving, and then you start looking around and you're seeing the glint hawk fly over the top of you and the tall neck that starts wandering across in front of the boat. Like, they were amazing concepts and things to see in the standard Horizon games, but to see them in VR, it's absolutely amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, mate, you've totally sold me on it. If I had the coin, looking at just your Let's Play of Horizon that we're seeing now, I am so incredibly jealous of this unit. Like, you can see how much the resolution's increased. You can see how much the performance has increased. I'm so incredibly jealous, man. It must be such a thrill to play.
Oh, it is, and I'll talk about it with one of the other games we'll discuss a bit later on. But you're right in terms of the increased graphical capabilities of it compared to the VR one, and I think I've mentioned in previous shows I haven't really gone hands on with a lot of the PC ones, so I can't really speak so much to those. But in terms of the PSVR one, the graphical updates and capabilities that they've been able to throw in there, really, it's almost like night and day, and it's night and day. And it's funny that you mentioned the comparative to the VR being the SNES. So if you look at some of the games on the SNES compared to the NES, it's leaps and bounds above the two systems, and that's pretty much what it feels like. The only downside I will say to it is there's a lot of climbing involved, and you'll see that even in the Let's Play and some of the footage that's up on the screen now. There is quite a lot of climbing that you've got to move the character up and down rock faces, and even once you get into some of the caves and the caverns that you're trying to dodge around some of the watches, there is still the main method of movement for a lot of that is clinging to structures within the caves and support beams and things like that, and that's the main method of moving. And I sort of found it was the first probably half an hour that you're doing it, it's really enjoyable and it's something different that you probably would never have experienced before. But the longer it goes on, and I think I haven't finished the game, but my understanding is it's about 8 hours long.
Yep.
So I would imagine that once you get towards the back end of that, at 4 and 5 plus hours, that it's going to wear pretty thin. That constant having to put the controllers up above your head and move left and sort of out left and right. And I understand that's part of the VR experience, but it just seems to be a bit overdone in this particular instance.
Yep.
That's probably my one drawback from it. Overall, though, from what I've experienced and the time I've put in it, I'd say probably maybe 3 hours into it, so a little under halfway. And probably a bit less than halfway, because I've spent a lot of time just, as you can see on the screen, just standing there and looking around and admiring the scenery and stuff like that. So,
well, I'm sure
I'll probably
as bad as you, man. If that were me, I wouldn't have progressed half this far.
Well, and it's just funny. You just sit there and admire it, and it feels like a real world that you're part of. But I can imagine that once you get much further into it, it's going to wear pretty thin, I should say. So I'm sort of hopeful that, I'm hopeful that it sort of lessens out. But the reality is, I don't think it will, because that's, as I said before, one of the main mechanics of the game is the traversal and the climbing. So I think you're sort of stuck with that to the end. But in terms of a day and date release for the VR2, I reckon it's a fantastic title. It's certainly, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a system seller, but the reality is, if you have a VR2 or you're interested in getting a VR2, certainly it's well worth. And I still think you can get it packaged as a bundle with the headset itself, which works out cheaper than buying it separately to the headset. So, there's certainly an incentive there to get it, and it's well worth it if you've even if you have done VR before, it's certainly worth jumping into and having a look at. I've quite enjoyed what I've seen so far. The only other thing that I will mention is, and I think I mentioned it in the Let's Play, is there's a lot of verticality in it, as I said, climbing and that sort of stuff, and I'm not great with heights, so I've sort of found myself at times, after about half an hour or 40 minutes of playing it, I need to take the headset off and just have a break from the heights, effectively, and the movement around that sort of thing, which I haven't.
I was just going to say, my limit is 40 minutes. After 40 minutes, regardless of what the VR title is, I've got to jump out of there to re-acclimatize myself, get my headspace back right. Sorry, Matt, I cut you off.
No, it's all good. So that's, this is probably one of the only title that I've ever actually found that's an issue. in terms of I just can't. I need to take a break as opposed to, you've got the headset on, you start getting hot, and you just want to get, like you said, just reacclimatize yourself with the real world and that sort of stuff. This is the only time that I've felt starting to get to the point of physically ill, and I think it's just that heights thing, which, as I said, I'm not great with heights. So, if there's anyone out there listening thinks they are, you can still play it. I've still played it, but it might be you just need to go with your eyes open that you might only be able to play it for half hour, 40 minutes at a time before you need a break, and then jump back into it after that.
Fair warning, mate. My last point on this whole thing would just be that watching your footage on this, it looks like we're finally ready for a real cliffhanger game. Game of the movie cliffhanger. How do you reckon you'd go, Sylvester Stalloning away on the side of a hill?
It's bad enough up these mountains. If I was sitting up the top of, the snow-capped hills with thousands of empty space sitting beneath you, and all you're doing is hanging onto the cliff, and if you miss a jump or miss a handhold or something, you're going to start falling down. Then I have to draw the line at that, I think.
Perfect. All right. Moving on then. Game 2 is in fact TV show 2. It is The Last of Us HBO episode. It's episode 7, isn't it? We've got 6 written here in the notes, but I think we watched 7, didn't we?
Yeah, I believe it was 7. Let me just double check that for you. It was number 7. Yep, episode 7.
It was number 7. Now, of course, this was the episode that was The Last of Us. No, Left Behind, isn't it? It's the Left Behind DLC, this episode.
Yep.
Phenomenal episode. I'm going to start a bit backwards. I know Unky has normally a much more elaborate setup, but I'm going to go straight to taking my hat off this week to the staging department. The way they made that mall, or what do you call it, shopping center look when they've flicked the lights on and up she comes, that was absolutely phenomenal and breathtaking. They really made such a stark contrast with, the post-apocalyptic world, and then bang, we're back into 2003, I think. The timeline, the world fell apart at that time. I thought it was.
I'm not sure the exact timeline, because they're actually in, and even in the game, they're actually post the actual event occurring, and it's now when Ellie and the other character's name escapes me, are actually inside basically a military training camp, for want of a better word. So I can't recall exactly where the timeline fits in, but I don't think I think it's a number of years post.
It is, absolutely. I just mean that the mall was last in use by real humans in 2003, I believe.
Sorry, yep.
Yeah. So they did such a good job of going, and here's a snapshot back, 15 years or whatever it was. I was absolutely floored by it. They did such a good job with it.
Yeah, it does look amazing, and it's funny when they start sort of rolling the camera through there and seeing some of the old stores and stuff, which I don't frequent shopping centres or malls, depending on where you're from, that often, but certainly some of the old stores that you see there that you go, I don't think I've seen one of those in 15, 20 years. So it sort of brings back some memories in that respect.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. I was really blown away by it, and it's been a long time since I've gone hands on with that DLC myself, so I don't recall how true to the game the story was, but from my memory, as I said, it's probably been 5 years since I've played it, but it reminisced in my mind. It felt true to the game. I'm hopeful you can speak to it, Billy. You played it on the PS5, which is, I should say, your footage here we're watching with the HBO characters over top to avoid the copyright strike.
I did, but I'm probably a little bit worse than you, because I don't think I've actually played through it in about 10 years since it was released or re-released on the PS4. And then for some reason, because I watched the episode first, and I thought, oh yeah, that all sounds familiar and it looks familiar and all that sort of stuff. And then I jumped back into the game to capture this footage. And when you start off, it's just Ellie by herself rolling around the mall trying to look for some medical supplies for Joel. So that's, sort of ties in a little bit to the episode as such, but the actual start of it is Ellie by herself, and I probably only put in the 20 minutes, half an hour to get this footage and haven't gone much further. So I honestly can't recall how the rest of Left Behind plays out, to be fair.
Oh, I think it was pretty true to form. I feel like they extended the approach to the Shopping center. I feel like we almost started at the start of the shopping center where they had the over the rooftop bit in the TV show, and it looked fantastic as well. Like the whole set design the whole time was really impressive. And then, of course, without spoiling the TV show, but the small narrative twist they did for how they tied her experience, a few years earlier in the shopping mall to how it ties back into how she's interacting with Joel at the end of the episode. I just really love that bit of script writing as well. They really sort of stitched the two together, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because when I went back and started getting the footage, it was almost there were sections of it where you were playing through the game, and especially in the early part where Ellie's trying to tend to Joel when he's injured on the floor and that sort of stuff that almost mirrored. If you put them up side by side with the episode, that you'd be looking at the two of them and just thinking, well, which one's which, because it was almost scene for scene. But then as you said, it sort of differentiates itself out after Ellie leaves Joel, and then it jumps over to the military camp, and then obviously going into the mall itself, and that sort of stuff playing out. So it differentiates a little bit from the start. But I agree with you. It was another fantastic episode. They just keep rolling them out, to be honest. And I know this was, we've seen the Left Behind as part of the DLC in the original game, but again, that they're sort of taking the storyline away from the main part of the actual game itself and giving us more background and more reason to sort of invest in the characters and more background as to how the virus has come about, which they didn't do in this one, but certainly they have in the past. The fact that they're fleshing out the world for me is really fantastic, given that a lot of the people watching this, at least initially, would have been fans of the game itself. So the fact that they fleshed that out, and then others will jump on board and be enjoying it and seeing it all unfold, and not necessarily know the game's background itself. I think it just gives something for everyone that's watching it. It doesn't matter where you're coming from.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I agree completely. I am so excited now. Is there only one episode left? I believe there's only 8 episodes in the HBO series. Is that correct?
Oh, you'll have to give me a moment. I'm not sure if it's how many's in this current season, or whether, because that was always the thing, I guess, is whether they're going to run through the whole game in the first season, or whether they're going to break that up and then game 2 would be maybe season 3 or 4 or something like that, as to how they
I could definitely
sort of play that out.
I could see them speed running the end and doing it in one more episode. I'm relatively confident that there was only 8 episodes in the first HBO series. And then, if memory serves, there was an interview with Neil Druckmann specifically saying that he was looking, when they signed for season 2 after, episode 1 or episode 2 of this going live and being such a success, that he was saying HBO part 2 he was looking forward to, which was alluding to it being the second game, I believe. So
Okay. So I'm just having a look here. So it looks like it was season 1 of The Last of Us has 9 episodes, but it was written as 10. So I don't know how those last 2 episodes sort of play out, whether it's a
movie length,
a part 1, part 2, or a movie length. Yeah, it might go back to that, because I think the first episode was about an hour and a half, hour 40 long,
right.
I think.
Yeah, that does sound right. Yep.
So whether they end up doing 9 episodes and then making, as you said, the last episode another, hour and a half, hour 40 minutes of the movie length style thing, just to tie it all up at the end. So hopefully we've still got, well, by the look of it, we've still got 2 episodes to go, and we'll just have to wait and see what the length of those is and how they sort of wrap it up. And as I said, whether they actually go to the conclusion of the end of the first game, or whether, they sort of leave that hanging as a bit of a cliffhanger over to the next season, and then at some point they jump into the actual second part of the game. It'd be interesting to see how that sort of plays out, because I can certainly see them getting up to the point where, without the spoilers, but the last level in the game, I could almost see them sort of leaving that as a cliffhanger for season 2. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
100%, mate. I see that as a great marketing ploy. Take it right up to the goal line, but don't actually score. And then, let the game fans out there go like, oh, it's fantastic and the ending's brilliant, but you got to play the game now. You can either go out and buy a PlayStation 5, buy the game and play the ending for yourself, or wait, 12 months or however long it is until HBO get around to doing the second season. That'd be quite the marketing ploy if they left it there, I reckon.
Well, I mean, the other part with it as well is that if they were originally wrote it as a 10 episode season, and then seeing how successful and how popular and how many viewers they're getting, whether that's changed their thought process in terms of how they end season 1 and then start season 2. Like if it had have been, okay ratings enough to get a second season, whether they just play through game 1 and then game 2, but the fact that they've got a massive hit on their hands in terms of viewership and an audience, and it's one of the most talked about things that I've seen, from a mainstream perspective for a while, as to whether they've then turned around and gone, oh, hang on, let's try and drag this out a bit. Yeah. Let's make hay while the sun shines, I guess, so to speak.
Indeed, mate. I wonder if they really put their minds to it. Could they make that first sort of hour of part 2, if they can draw that hour out into a full second season, maybe? Without giving any spoilers, I'm dancing around it, as you can appreciate.
And these are all things that we don't know, and that's probably what makes it really good, as I said before, from a fan of the games themselves, that they sort of leave you guessing as to where they're going with things and how they're going to play out the story and how they're going to retell it in the format of a TV show.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. I don't really have any further points made. Is there anything else you'd like to tie off, or shall we move on into Game 3?
No, I think if we keep going, we're probably going to give away some spoilers, so we might just jump over to Game 3.
Perfect, mate. I love it. Now, this one, feel free to spoil, because it is, of course, Moss Book 1 and 2. The Let's installs are up, thanks to your good self, for the PSVR 2 on the PlayStation 5 on Geek Aloud. We've got the Let's installs up, and you've gone hands-on, sir. So over to you for your thoughts on Moss Book 1 and 2.
Yeah, so I've done the install for both of them, and there's a Let's Play, which you can see some of the footage for that in the background. That's of Book 2. So I went through. I think because these were originally released on the VR 1 as well. So I never played number 2, but I certainly put probably 3 or 4 hours into number 1. Really enjoyed it for the time that I had it. It was just sort of the way I had things set up at the time. I had to dismantle the VR and couldn't get back into it, but. Jumping into it again with this, where I've got it set up properly and I can just pull it out at a moment's notice, I sat there over the weekend and bashed out the whole of Book 1. And it is...
Sorry, what was the playtime on that?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Probably 6 to 8 hours with a bit of mucking around in between.
Yep, beautiful.
It is... And I explained it on the actual Let's Play, is that... It's a very different way of doing a VR game, because most of the time you will play as in a first person perspective, where you're looking from the character's eyes or head, and it's all first person point of view, that you where you look is where your character looks, etc., etc. Now you can see on the screen there that you're controlling the little mouse quill, and they've set up but in essence, the way each area set up is like a little diorama, is probably the best way to describe it. Each sort of section that you go through, and within that diorama there's different puzzles. There's a little bit of platforming that you've got to do. There's collectibles in each of the little areas and stuff like that. But what makes it really interesting from a VR perspective is that you could be sitting there and looking at that little area or level, and sort of go, okay, well, I'm not sure where to go, or I can't see the collectible. But if you stand up or start moving around physically within your space, that then translates on screen. So if you stand up, for instance, you can then look over the top of, there might be a pillar or a wall or something like that you can now look over the top of, or look around and see what's behind it and stuff like that, which I thought was, a really interesting way of using VR, and not one, you've put a lot more time into VR than I have. I haven't really seen it. I'm not sure if you have, outside of Moss, using or utilising VR in this sort of way.
the main one that comes to mind, and I'm blanking on the name, but it'll come to me. It's one's in the title, but there's a tower defense game in which you place, it's kind of like this sort of moss overview of the map of a tower defense game where you can place your towers and then you can click a button and you drop into first person view in the tower. It's like one more shot,
Yep.
one more grenade, something like this. Doesn't matter. PC VR, it's an amazing game. If you like tower defenses, it's like the first time you get to position the towers and then jump in and actually man the Gatling gun or whatever as the enemies come through. It's brilliant. It does this exact gameplay, though, where you want to like look around the battlefield and look over the top of some things to see the lines. Sorry, mate, back to you.
No, and it's actually funny as well because I've had my kids sitting here while I've been playing it, and I sort of tell them, oh, in each little area we need to find the scroll. That's one of the collectibles in each sort of scene. And I'll sort of look through it and I'll go, oh, I can't see it. And so while I'm making my way through the level and doing the puzzles and the traversal, the kids will be sitting there going, oh, no, you just saw it there. It was over to your right or over to your left or it's up the top. So they're watching it on the TV as I'm playing it in the VR space, and they can, sort of help you out with it as well, which, it's not family fun night style thing, but it's certainly, something to get other people involved rather than normally
right.
with a VR headset is that you've got your earphones in, you've got it covering your eyes and you're basically blocked out from the entire outside world. Whereas, I've just left one earpiece out and they're sort of going, no, Dad, back over here, or, go here or do this. And then they start jumping into the puzzles as well. Oh, why don't you move that over there? That'll help you out and that sort of stuff. So
yeah, very cool.
It's interesting that they've, and again, I never really thought of it like that. Is a different way to play it, that they can jump in it as well. But
if I can jump in on that, mate.
Yeah.
Just when you get around, I know you haven't gone hands-on yet, but when you do get a chance to go hands-on with the James Bond one, I Expected to Die, and I Expected to Die 3 we covered last week is coming. It's been announced and presumably coming out later this year. But that's a great one as well for like couch audience participation, where you can be in there and you're trying to solve puzzles and someone next to you on the couch and go, oh, try picking this book up, or try opening that drawer with this key, or that sort of stuff. Back to you, Billy.
Yeah. So it's as I said, it's something I never really thought of when in terms of when you talk about VR is getting other people involved. But certainly it sounds like there is a number of titles that you can. In terms of the actual game itself, when we were talking about Horizon before and the graphics and the way that they put the world together, it is absolutely, in my opinion, phenomenal. And I'm not sure if it looked this good on the VR1, but certainly on the VR2, like you start looking around the castle and some of the caves that you're in, and you can see the stonework and you can see etchings on the ground and all that sort of stuff. It is really I've used the word before, but I don't think there's any other way to describe it. It's like a living, breathing diorama that you've got your head right in the middle of.
Yep.
And you can look around and just see the detail, and it's absolutely fantastic. The gameplay itself, fantastic. You've got the puzzles that you've got to get through. They're not, mind melters by any stretch of the imagination, but you've got to sort of work your way around. You've got to look around the level and sort of work your way through it. So there is times that you sort of go, oh, if I need to flick that switch, but how do I keep that switch down while I go over here? And you have to sort of work your way through that. The story itself, look, it's not something to write home about, but there's enough there to keep you entertained and keep you going to the end. So really enjoyed number one. I'll put probably the 20 minutes I did the Let's Play for into book 2, but really excited to get back into that one and play through that as well. And if it's more of the same, which from what I've seen and the limited amount I've played through, it looks like it is. So I'm really excited to get back into it. I reckon it's a day one release for the VR. I know that there is going to be some critics, yourself included, that are going to say, well, it was a title on the original PlayStation VR, and why isn't there an update or a $10 fee to get you to the next level? But again, the reality is, I think it's well worth the experience and well worth the money. And as I said, I got 8 odd hours of enjoyment out of it, and it's not a full price game.
Well,
and I think you get 2 as a collection.
Yes, mate. But if I can, I'll note that because you've been playing it and I've been watching your Let's Plays and I've been incredibly jealous, I've been toying around with the idea of how long is it going to take me to actually be able to afford this and pull the pieces together. But what I've noticed scrolling through the PlayStation Store, I've noticed that all the games that have the upgrade, though Moss included, but also oh gosh, I'm blanking on it now, but there was 5 games. Tetris Effect is one of them, Tetris Effect Connect, by owning the PS4 one, and they've all got the upgrade available now, and all the upgrades are at like 60 to 70% off, and it looks like it's a $12 to $14 fee at the moment for, I think it was 7 of the games that I'm red hot on from PSVR 1. It's, yeah, that just over, it's under $20, the upgrade fee. They're not charging the full $40 or whatever it is. They're all, as I said, a 60 to 70% discount currently on the PlayStation Store to do that upgrade. And I don't know how long that sale is going to last for, but that is such a carrot on the end of the stick for me to like, geez, I really should pull the trigger on getting this headset early and then jumping in. I presume it's only a limited time that they're going to allow you to do the upgrade for Moss 1 and 2, the upgrade for Tetris Effect Connect. There Pistol Whip was another one. There were so many of them that I was keen to get hold of, and they're all currently discounted for that upgrade. So, geez, I'm keen. I'm so close to a purchase.
Well, it's funny that I've got you to that point, or you've got yourself to that point, having seen the Let's Plays and some of the offerings, because I know the conversations we've had over the last 6 months is you've been fairly negative on it in terms of the price point.
It is just that price point.
And a lot of that stuff that goes with it. But
God, it looks good. And you've got nothing but glowing things. And I can look at the way it runs and I can see it and I hear what you say. I'm like, this, I would say, is easily twice the resolution of my PC VR. And I can see that it runs smoother. I can see that it looks better. And you're saying it's like being in the world. Like, I am such a hardcore VR fan. This is me down to the ground. And I'm just $880 shy of making it a reality.
Well, and it's funny because I spoke a little bit about it last week, but just some of the tech that's in there. So the resolution that you've got out of each of the eyepiece screens, I guess is probably the best way to call it. You've got the eye tracking in there. You've got the updated controls, which are more in line with some of the PC variants and the way that it tracks your fingers and your hands and your movement with that, not just the buttons with the dodgy old PS3 hangover wand type ones. It's actually a properly developed controller that you're playing with, and all that piece together. Look, I agree with you. It's a fair amount of money to stump up, and it's more than the actual console itself. I get all of that. I can see where I can understand the criticism, but the reality is, I sort of look at it and go, it's as good as or better than any other VR experience on the market, and you don't have to outlay for a PC on top of it.
Yeah.
If you've already got a PS5, you just need the headset. You don't need a decent running PC, and then on top of that, get the VR headset, which is pushing you over that mark that you're spending anyway. So
yeah, and I know I've said it before, mate, but the other problem I've got with the PC VR 2 is it's dealer's choice. I'd call it a 50% hit rate. Anytime my NVIDIA graphics card drivers get updated, there's a 50% chance that the PC VR isn't going to work on that driver. And I either have to roll back or just accept my PC VR is not going to work for another 2 weeks until NVIDIA roll out the next update. It's crazy. Whereas I know from past experience, the PSVR1, it was just a console game. It just worked. You plug it in, put it on, and go. And that is so appealing to me. The number of times that I've wanted to do PC VR, and even though the rig technically works, it's a driver conflict or a game update or something's broken it, which is so common to the PC experience. I love it when PlayStation nails something like this. I'm so keen.
Yeah, and that's to be honest, that's probably one of the reasons that I was a big PC fan back in the mid to late 90s and even into the early 2000s, and that was really one of the things that started to put me off it is the fact that you'd have there'd be driver issues, or there'd be different updates, or files within your PC or the system that needs to be updated, and you were constantly having to work out, which one is it, or how do I do it? You were, this is before the age of YouTube and Google and all that sort of stuff. So you're left to your own devices, and that's really why I went back to console gaming as opposed to PC gaming, where I've probably stayed for the last 20 plus years, is because of that simplicity. You've got a power cord, you've got a cord into the back of your TV. It just works when you turn it on. And the same as this, there is one cord that goes into the front of your PS5, and you turn it on and it works. You might need the occasional, system update.
Yep.
And that's okay. But when they run the update, everything works.
Yep.
You're not getting to that position of exactly what you said. So, it just works for me.
Beautiful. Again, I wish it did for me.
Again, can't speak highly enough of it, and it's just another one of before we move on to the next one. To be honest, from what I've seen, the launch lineup that they've released, and I know that some of them are re-releases of VR1 titles, but the launch library that they've got at day and date with the headset is as good as I've ever seen for a console. And then you look at, I think there's over 100 games either in development or due to be released at some point in the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
Yep.
There's a fair bit of effort being put into supporting it, above and beyond probably what we got out of the VR1. I think they sort of released that almost as a tester to see how to go and all that sort of stuff. But development, especially from Sony's end, sort of dried up pretty quickly. But it seems like we're going to get a fair amount of software and games coming out for it going down the track. So, again, it's one of those things with an early adopter. You're always going to pay through the nose for it if you can't afford it now. All I would say to anyone that is if you've got any interest in it whatsoever, that's okay, and you can't afford it, that's okay. Just, keep an eye out because it will go down eventually, and, in 12 or 18 months, you might be able to get it for $300 or $400 off of it and jump into it at that point, or, save up for it. But, from what I've seen in the games I've played, well worth it.
Yeah, it looks like it. Final question for me before we move on, mate, is just how are those controllers going? What's the battery life on them? Have you run into the controllers going flat before you're ready to hang them up, or are they all right?
No, they've been pretty good. So it's probably one of the things with VR anyway, and you touched on it before, is you can't really sit down for a 10-hour session in VR. It's just not conducive to that. So I sort of find that I'll play for, with Moss, I probably played for an hour and a half at a time. And then you come out and have a break. And then when you have your break, you plug your controls in. I haven't had them run out of battery or even come close to running out of batteries.
Yeah, perfect.
The only thing I will say, which I think I touched on last week, was that you only get one cord with the set itself. And I know your thoughts on it, and I don't disagree with you, but $80 for the charging cradle, I think is a bit excessive. But I think ultimately down the track, it's probably going to be something that I'll be investing in, because having them sort of sit up on a desk or on the couch, charging, just sort of sitting there, I can see them getting broken with the kids rolling around, and you can only do one at a time. So you got to remember to keep switching them over, unfortunately.
Yeah, that does sound painful. All right, now moving on to game for this evening, something that isn't painful at all, Rhythm Sprout. Now, this is a little indie title, and I just want to shine a big light on this because, as we all know, I rolled credits on, and I'm blanking on it. What was the rhythm game stealth drop from Bethesda a couple of weeks ago on the Xbox Game Pass?
Hi-Fi Rush.
Hi-Fi Rush, thank you very much. So post rolling credits on Hi-Fi Rush, what a brilliant game that was. Game of the year discussion, absolutely. I was looking for another rhythm game, and I came across Rhythm Sprout. This game came out a month ago on PlayStation, and it's unique in the sense of, one, you can see it, you're walking up the screen there, so it's the callback to Guitar Hero or Rock Band, where the notes are coming down the screen. But what I'll point out is the yellow notes are pick any of the face buttons on the right you like, square, circle, triangle, or cross. And then the orange ones on the left are any of the D-pad, up, down, left, or right. And then the long blue ones are any of your L1R ones, triggers on the top, but they translate to like left is orange, pink is right, and then the blue ones are the shoulder buttons, and the shoulder buttons being dodge. But you just sort of progress your way, sort of stepping up the level in time with the music. And the music is phenomenal. As I understand, it's all been custom written for the game. And it's, EDM, it's hip hop, it's a bit of K-pop action in there as well. but it's all just works beautifully. I absolutely love it. So the unique songs, they're not like your Guitar Hero Rock Band in that sense, but the way the notes scroll down the screen and the way you get to pick your own buttons on the controller is actually an absolute godsend for the old arthritis fingers, because if my thumb's starting to get jammed up on X, you can just as easily move up to triangle for argument's sake. And it's just that different position on the thumb, which means you can keep going mid-song. It doesn't matter. You can bop, and get it going. And then down the bottom left, you can see, what do they call it? Sugar Rush, I think, is like your star power. And it'll give you, or I'm guessing, about 20 seconds of you can hit any button you like, and every button's correct for that 20 seconds while it's running. And I think it gives you an extra 20% XP boost or something. But it's gameplay is straightforward. You progress like straight down the road, the path, whatever it is, and then intermittently you'll get an enemy come up against you. And when you're fighting against the enemies, when the block button comes in, you dodge it, all in time with the music. Just a unique, great, simple idea. As I said, it's $20 on PlayStation. It's just a fantastic game, just a rhythm game. So, Bully, it's probably not for you. You're not a rhythm game fan, as I understand it, mate.
Oh, I used to be back in the old Rock Band and Guitar Hero days. I was actually not bad at those, but it seems Father Time's caught up with me, and I don't even have the arthritis hands. I just have I never had any actual internal rhythm anyway. But it seems whatever I did have has just gone completely out the window. I was just having a look at it there. So you've got you can see on the screen there the pink one's coming up, and then you've got the yellow one. Is that where you've sort of got to hit two buttons in quick succession?
Yeah, exactly. So pink's the right-hand button and the orange is left-hand button. So you're like left, right, left, right, right, left, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you right now I'd be no chop at this. I can't, I think I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, I really liked Hi-Fi Rush, and I got to that particular door where I just cannot do the rhythm timing to unlock the door. And unfortunately, I know you and Unky have been glowing in its praise. I've had to give it up. So I'm sort of looking at this almost in the same vein, going, there's no way I could do that quickly. My reflexes have well and truly gone out the door in that respect. So
honestly,
I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for it. It's a good game, but I'm not sure it's something I'll be jumping into.
From a music note frequency standpoint, this game is twice as hard as Hi-Fi Rush, just in the fact that you can do, like, I don't know if you've ever played the drums, but paradiddles, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, like that kind of like speed and repetition and alternation happens in this. And Hi-Fi Rush is it on simple mode. There you can see the Sugar Rush mode where every button's correct. Great time to drop it against an enemy, as you can see me fighting there on screen. But yeah, to get that really fast rhythm time in, it's a callback to my drumming days to pull it off. But thoroughly enjoyable experience, and I can confirm with the young kids, they can just pick it up and run with it like nothing else.
Yeah, I think what you've just described there has absolutely put me out the door with that one. There's no way I'm touching it.
Well, I can't wait till the next time you're back in the studio, mate, and we'll fire it up and just get some video of you playing.
Oh, that'll be as good as the plane crash you've got me on in the current one.
Perfect.
I can't do fighter sims, so all I do is crash planes.
No worries. Well, that's it for Rhythm Rush. I say check it out. Rhythm Sprout, excuse me. If you're into your rhythm games, it's definitely worth looking. As I said, $20 on PlayStation, well worth it. All right, now Game 5 was initially for Ace, but I figure we can do a little update while we're here. So, in memory of Ace's dying laptop, I'll say now it's over to you, Bully, for just a Hogwarts Legacy update, mate. How's the game sitting with you? I think, what are we now, about 3 weeks post-launch?
Yeah, thereabouts. So I had this little bit of fatigue, and I get this occasionally with games where, for anyone that's played it, there's that, I guess you call it the opening section of the map where you've got Hogwarts, Hogsmeade, and then you've got an area to the north and south of that as well that you can sort of explore.
I think you'll notice, though, mate, that all roads lead to Hogsmeade.
Oh God, I hate you know what? I hate going to that town for that exact reason. It's either that or there's nothing so cozy as Hogsmeade or something. There's another comment like that every time you go there, come on, man, come on, give me something else. But you've got that sort of map at the start, and I know that I looked at it fairly early on, and as I sort of do is to get a layout and have a look. And there was another section over to the bottom right on the map that you can see, and clearly you're always going to get to that point at some stage, and I got to that point probably about 3 or 4 hours ago, game time, and almost hit the proverbial wall where I've just sort of gone, like, I've done so much exploring in that first section and done a lot of the Merlin trials and a lot of the map markers and that sort of stuff. And then you get to this other section, which is equally as big in terms of its size and breadth. And then you start getting the markers again. And I don't know how you feel with it, but I just sort of look at it and go, oh, God, I've got to do 30 Merlin trials again. Like, they're enjoyable while you're doing them, but when you sort of go, oh, I've made a fair bit of headway in it, and I've done a large chunk of them, and now you've basically got to double what you've already done. It was almost not heartbreaking, but off-putting that you're sort of sitting there going, oh, I'd have to sit here and do basically the extent of it again. So I actually put the game down for about a week and went off and did some other things, and then fired it up again over the weekend and sort of started getting back into it to the point where like each day I'll probably put an hour or two into it. And that's probably enough for me at this stage. It sort of keeps things ticking along without me getting to the point of being
overwhelmed.
I wouldn't say annoying's the gameplay, but without sort of having it wear thin is probably the best way to describe it. Just putting a couple of hours in, you get that enjoyment out of it, but it doesn't wear thin that you don't want to come back to it the next day. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment in that respect. But that's not to say it's a bad game. I've really enjoyed, apart from that sort of that part where you get into that bit of the map, everything else that I've played, I've really enjoyed. The side quests are fantastic. The main quests are fantastic. And, I touched on it before, even the Merlin trials and stuff that you got to sort of work through. There's probably, what would be there? Probably 6 or 8 different variations of the Merlin trials in terms of how you solve them. And they just sort of change the position of different things here and there. But
have a guess, mate. What do you reckon my favourite mini game of Merlin's Trials? What was the variant that tickled me pinkest? And by that, of course, I mean the one that I was destined to fail repeatedly.
Fail repeatedly?
Yeah.
I don't know, the one where you've got the 3 flames that you got to light in quick succession.
No, the 3D platformer one where you've got to jump. Here it is right here. See it and say
yes,
it. The 3D platforming jumping. I can't tell you. Like, it's such a basic concept, and I seriously failed this at least 12 times before I got it right. Of course, you're only seeing now the one time I got it right, but this was just agony to my old man hands.
No, well, I should have picked that up. I know you and your platforming, but I probably found that's probably at this stage the best way to play it is once you get to that sort of point, and I think I'm about 28, 29, 30 hours in, is that you've probably seen pretty much everything the game's got to offer other than finishing off the main story. So it's just a matter of, at this point for me, is just a couple of hours here and there and just to keep you in the game. But you know how you sort of, when you put a game down, you go, I'll get back to that, and then 3 months later you go back to it, and you forget the gameplay and you forget the mechanics, and then you start going, what was going on with this story? And then quite often you'll go, I really wanted to play it again. You get 5 minutes into it and go, I've either got to start this again or try and push through this unknown of where I'm at and what I'm doing. So I don't really want to get to that point. So I'm just sort of hoping that, if I do half a dozen hours a week and just keep plodding along with it while I do other things and play other stuff, that'll keep the enjoyment, because it is, at the end of the day, it has a couple of shortcomings, but it is a really fantastic game.
Yeah. It's phenomenal for me, mate. I think I'm halfway through the story. I think I'm right at the end of autumn. So I believe I'm right at the halfway point. But jumping ahead a little bit, Wolong comes out tomorrow, and that being a Dark Souls-esque game requires 60 to 70% of my brain space, and this game requires 50. So there's no way I can dual wield these games. So I'm going to have to rapidly wrap up Hogwarts by the end of this weekend. So next week I can drop myself fully into Wolong. Of course, the Let's Install will be up on the channel tomorrow, and I'll start to go hands-on, but I won't be able to fully commit to the controller memorization until I've got Hogsmeade out of my system, so to speak. So I'm loving it. I'm about halfway through it now. I think I'm 22 hours on the shot clock. And as I said, I'm coming up to the end of autumn, but my intent now is to mainline it, roll credits, Saturday, Sunday, and then be all about Wolong next week. Any final points on Hogwarts, mate, before we move into the news studios?
No, that's probably it for me. Although I did just notice in the chat there, I think Sean Game said he's got 2 trophies to go before he gets the platinum, and he's saying it's his favourite game of the year. So there you go.
Great work, Sean. I love it. Give us a score, Sean. What's your score out of 10 for Hogwarts at this stage, being so close to the platinum? I'll take your word as gospel. All right, Bully, shall we kick in that door?
Kick it in.
Bully, who has the right to remain newsworthy this week?
Well, we've got, as we mentioned at the top of the show, we've got 6 news stories for this week. So we'll jump straight into the first one, and that is Suicide Squad, the upcoming Arkham developer game. Rocksteady is saying that it requires an online connection even for the single player mode. And I will tell you straight off the bat, Suicide Squad is probably an apt name, because that's about where they're heading with this one, straight for a self-mutilation.
Indeed, that screams we decided this was going to be a single-player only game way too far into development. You can tell from that decision alone that she was intended to be a Gotham Knights style game until they decided they didn't have. What have they had so far? 15 years of development time. They couldn't squeeze another 5 in to finish off the multiplayer.
Oh, what was it? I'm trying to think. 2014 or 15 was the last of the Arkham Knight games. So they've had 7 or 8 years.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've had 7 or 8 years of, they've released nothing since then. So they've had 7 or 8 years to sort of work their way through, and clearly there would have been some pre-development stuff going on before that last Arkham game was released. So you're looking at probably, in real terms, the better part of a decade that they've been in some way, shape, or form working on this. And I sort of, reading between the lines with this one, I sort of think that they were maybe leaning towards Marvel's Avengers style.
Yeah, bingo.
Game, and thought that's the way to go. And then when they realised that how big of a tank that was, and how the general community was repulsed, I should say, by the the ongoing requirements of it, and even the single player game, I think was okay for some parts of it, but it was basically, in essence, a pay to win, or a pay to unlock more content, etc. And how poorly that was received. I think they've then, after 7 or 8 years of development, gone, pump the brakes, we can't do that anymore, let's try and do something else. And it's too late, because I've already got the vast majority of out, and there is going to be things like this with a permanent internet connection, or permanent DRM that needs to be checked in fairly regularly at some point. That it's just something that they couldn't remove without essentially tearing the heart out of the game. And 100%. So I was, when I initially heard about this, was really excited about it. Rocksteady and the Arkham games they put out are some of my favourites going back over the last 15 years. But this, the more I hear about this, the more I just look at it and go, I don't know, unless something when it's released changes my mind, that it comes out to glowing reviews and it's fantastic. I don't really think this is something that that interests me at this point, unless something else major changes. But I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
I love the look of the gameplay. I love a lot of what I'm hearing. But yes, to exactly what you're just saying, the fact that an online connection is always required says that it was such a multiplayer game, up until the train wreck that was Avengers a couple of years ago, and they just haven't been able to pull the stops out properly. Like, this has got warning bells written all over it. I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for a surprise, underrated hit that was Gotham Knights. I wish the best for them, but this is a big red flag on my horizon. I will certainly not be I will not be anticipating a 10 out of 10 on this one. I think we'll be lucky to see a 7 here, but we'll see how it goes. Story 2 this evening. is Hitman. Something's going on in the land of Hitman. Bully, tell us things, please.
Hitman developer IO Interactive announced that they are making an online fantasy RPG. That's about all we know of it, to be honest with you. They're telling us that that's what they're doing, and apart from that, haven't really shared much of it, to be honest. But I'm really interested in it, to be honest with you. I think the reboot of the Hitman series that they started 4 or 5 years ago with 1, 2, and 3, and a couple of months ago or a month ago, I think it was, that they basically rolled all those games into one as an experience. So you didn't have to jump between games; you could just go through the one dashboard and play any of the levels and all that sort of stuff. They've shown, in my opinion, over the last half a decade, that they know what they're doing in terms of giving the consumers what they want, and not only what they want, but value for money. Because I know you're a massive Hitman fan, Troy,
Indeed.
But certainly the replayability of the game itself, that you can go back into to levels that you've done maybe 10 or 20 times and still find different ways
50, 60.
Yeah, and there you go. So you can keep going back and finding different ways to go about it. So I'm really interested in what they can do in an RPG setting, and how that sort of fleshes out. So again, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I would imagine, being a fan of their most recent property, that this sort of tickles your interest a little.
It does, but the only thing I would say, yes, I'm excited for anything IO Interactive do, sign me up, but I honestly didn't want to hear anything about this until we had 007 in the wild. Just tell me what's going on with James Bond, and just give me James Bond news or Hitman World of Assassination updates until that one's out of the gate. And then once that one's done, then talk about your next project. It's just, for me, as excited as it makes me, I'm like, it's just a little bit too early, boys. Just keep it up. Keep the ace up your sleeves for a few more years until Bond's out in the wild, and then drop this on us. So exciting. I hope this was just a call to rally a few, hopefully they're employing developers. And this is hey, anyone who wants to make an MMO, come send us your CV. I hope this is all it's about. And then they go quiet on it for a couple of years until Bond's out in the wild. That's my hope anyway. But tickle me excited. I would love to play. I'm a big MMORPG fan. Everyone knows I've dropped hundreds of hours into World of Warcraft back in the day. So it's certainly...
Oh, me too. Well, that's one thing though, is I'm not sure I need another one of those in my life, because I'm probably the same as you. World of Warcraft sucked years out of my life.
Oh, you say sucked, I say time well spent. All right, what's story 3 got for us this evening, mate?
Depends which way you look at it, I suppose. Story 3, Xbox is revealing that prior to the summer showcase, they are going to hit us with some GoldenEye type reveals
Sorry, mate.
No, I was just going to say prior to said showcase, but really haven't gone, again, they've give us a little bit of tease, but haven't really gone into it. Other than there's maybe a little bit of speculation that they might redo GoldenEye. I know we only recently had the modern port for it, but it really still looked like it did have some enhanced graphics and control schemes and that sort of stuff. But it'd be interesting to see whether they're actually looking at or working to releasing a full reimagining, I guess, or new experience for the current consoles.
You don't think it's a synonym for stealth drops? GoldenEye type reveals, stealth type reveals. I'm thinking Starfield to be stealth dropped in a GoldenEye type event. No, am I reading the tea leaves wrong on this one?
Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it the wrong ways by saying GoldenEye type. You might be right that they stealth dropped that game. They might be stealth dropping some other stuff.
Yeah, we've got some stealth drops coming, boys. Get excited! You know what's just around the corner? Star Wars' original release date. I'm seeing a stealth drop coming on that
day. I would like to see it. I think. And I'm pretty sure I've mentioned in the past, is the fact that I think Starfield is too big a game to stealth drop, really. It needs at least a little bit of lead-up marketing
Microsoft
for it.
redefining the stealth drop.
who knows? Maybe that might be a big hit as well, because by the time you're coming up to the summer showcase and summer games fest, and the rabid festering mouldy corpse of E3, where the entirety of the video game world is focused on these events, it might be that, hey, come May or June, just before we hit the peak of all that, they do the stealth drop, and that's all anybody's talking about now is, Starfield's out, and how good Starfield,
Yeah,
hopefully.
and how well how
Yeah.
well do you cover Bethesda's bug-ridden Starfield than by stealth dropping it? Everyone will be so excited that they stealth dropped it. No one will be talking about the bug riddle that it is.
Well, I'm hoping it's not a bug-filled mess, and Bethesda having pushed out nothing other than Fallout 76 of really any note in the last, RPG-wise, in the last sort of decade. I'm hoping they've learnt the error of their ways, and they're stepping up for it. But
Well, what have we got? 15 days until Star Wars. I can't think of the sequel's name. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but it's not Fallen Order. It's the other one. Frontiers. No.
Fallen Order was the first one. Hang on, if you
Yeah, no, I'll vamp for a second. This
I
is
will
what I'm
find out for
saying.
you.
I'm pretty sure it was the 17th of this month, which is only 15 days away from now. They're saying Xbox says it has some GoldenEye reveals. Xbox says it has some stealth drops planned before its summer showcase. That's Starfield. It's dropping in 15 days. Color me excited. No one will be talking about the bugs. Everyone will be saying, oh my God, who saw this coming? The answer? The Gaming Enforcement Agency called it from a long way out. We saw him chipping in from the rough. What do you reckon, Bully? What's it called?
Look, I'll be honest. I don't think that it's... I don't think it's quite going to be that early. I wish it was, but... I think if we're hoping for a stealth release, I would have thought maybe mid-year, around that June time. So April, because it got pushed back, remember? So April 28th, and it's Jedi Survivor. Is
Jedi
the
Survivor, yeah. Jedi Survivor. So but the original date was the 17th of March, yeah? It got moved from the 17th of March back to Augustus Golump. No, April.
Thereabouts, I think, and I know what your reasoning was behind that, and you've been saying it for probably the better part of a month. Is that's when Starfield's dropping, and they were getting the hell out of the way of it. But I think the only thing I'll say, the only thing I'll say against that is that Starfield, I'm getting confused now. Star Wars is a big enough IP, I think, to stand by itself. And given the success of the previous game, I think this is probably going to be a bit of a winner. So I don't think, even with Starfield at some point on the horizon, I don't think they'd be hitting the panic stations and going, oh, well, we're going to move out of its way. I would have thought that that's big enough and strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet.
Oh, well, 3 episodes more of G.E.A. and we'll find out just how wrong the tea leaves were on this one. All right, story 4 this evening. It's last year's Game of the Year, is it not, Bully?
Last year's Game of the Year, well, your Game of the Year, yes. Elden Ring is getting its first the first expansion has been announced, and they're saying that it's in development. Haven't got a release date for it. We're just saying that it's in development, and I'll be honest. I know you'll be excited for it, and it doesn't matter when it comes out. But it's just one of those things with DLC. It's 12 months down the track. Now, if they were releasing it now, I could probably sort of go, "Yep, no worries." But the fact is, they're saying it's in development. That probably means we're not getting it in the next 6 months. We might get it by the end of the year or at some point in the next 12 months, by which point the game itself is almost 2 years old. And I'm not saying that people have moved on, because it's one of those games that you'll have your hardcore fans that are going to be jumping back into it all the time. But I think for the vast majority of people, that they'll sort of look at it and go, yep, that was fantastic when I played it 2 years ago, but I'm not quite sure that I want to jump back into it, irrespective of how good the DLC is. So that's only my concern. But I would have thought that, it'll be fairly expansive. It'll be more of what we've seen in Elden Ring, which was fantastic. It's just the time frame, I think, is the biggest issue.
Yeah, I agree completely, man. As you said, you've called it. I am red hot for this. Whenever they want to give it to me, I'm keen. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see this until November and they're just looking for those pre-Christmas, Black Friday type, pick up in sales end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't actually see this released until November. But to your point, I'm excited and I don't care when they release it. I'll certainly be going hands-on. It's just encouragement for me to finish for a second time, this time on the Xbox. And I'll pick it up and run with it from there.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think the other thing is, it's obviously the DLC will come for the people that already own it, but invariably there'll be a
Game of the Year
complete edition or a Game of the Year edition, and then they'll start throwing out. I've got no doubt there'll be some more collector's editions and various odds and ends to go with that. So they're obviously trying to wring it dry, and fair enough. It's a fantastic game, and they should be getting as much money as back into their pockets as they can out of it. So. If that's the way to do it, fantastic. I've got no issue with what they've done. From Software, a great development studio, so good luck to them. But again, I think it's just with a lot of games, and it's not just Elden Ring, but it's across the board, is that they're just, when they're releasing DLC, if it was within the first 6 months of the game coming out, then, that's fantastic. And you probably still would retain a little bit of interest or enough interest to jump back into it straight away. But when you're looking at it this far down the track, I think game development companies really need to start pushing that through. And I know there is others that have the school of thought that, well, if it was coming out a couple of months after the game was released, it should have been included with it. And you're just trying to wring us dry for every penny we've got. I don't really see it that way. I think you're well entitled to release. If it's a significant DLC, not just cosmetic sort of stuff, but if it's significant story experience and that sort of thing, if that comes out a couple of months down the track when you might be getting to the end of your actual playthrough, I've got no issue with that at all.
Yeah, for to put a number on it, mate, I agree with you completely. But I think 3 to 6 months, anywhere in that window, is a good sweet spot for the next bit of DLC, and then another 3 to 6 months after that for your second bit of DLC. But to your point, if this has taken 18 months, I agree completely. It's just taken too long to get out the door. I would honestly rather them just put the development into Elden Ring 2 and give it to us in 3 years, because they run the risk of a Fortnite, the next Fortnite, whatever it is, that next big sensation coming in and totally taking everybody off it and the games industry moving in a different direction. So I think don't even roll the dice on it. If it's going to take 18 months, hold it off for Elden Ring 2. But if you can get it out in 6 months, I say more power to you. And obviously Elden Ring, just sign me up. I'm keen. Story 4, Bully. What do we got?
Story 4, the ongoing, everlasting saga that is the Call of Duty and the Activision procurement or deal that's having hiccup after hiccup and hurdle after hurdle. But Xbox, hang on, I'm tripping over my words here.
Phil Spencer is Xbox, isn't he?
Xbox boss Phil Spencer is telling us that Call of Duty players will not miss out depending on what platform they're playing on. They have no interest in having it as an exclusive content for the Xbox itself, and that all the DLC and the odds and ends and purchase that you can make within each of the Call of Duty games will be available, so it won't be just held to the Xbox platform. And that comes on the back of the deal last week where Nintendo and Xbox signed the 10-year agreement that Call of Duty will be coming to the sticky Switch. Good luck with running that. But in fact, I don't even know how they're going to fit it on, because I checked. I mentioned to you before, I got the new internal SSD on the PS5, and I was checking through the volume or the data that's being used by Call of Duty at the moment, and how much space that takes up. I think it's almost 140 something gig. So I don't know how they think they're getting that on the in the Switch, other than some sort of cloud version. And good luck with that. But as I said, the saga drags on. I think it's just another shot over the bow at Sony, saying, "Well, you know, we told you, we've signed up with Nintendo. We're happy to try and play ball. Stop backing like all losers and just stand out of the way and let this deal go through."
Quit your crying, Jim Ryan. Get on board. Now, I know Unky's not here this evening. He's on duty, so I just wanted to put this shot up. Now, this is obviously from Call of Duty Warzone, but there's a shout-out to Unky's arms. Look at the arms on this bloke. Tell me that isn't modelled off Unky.
Well, I think it was last week he had the singlet and the guns out. So from what I saw last week, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep, there we have it. All right, shout out to you, Unky. Thanks for keeping us safe out there, my friends. Good work on duty. Story, what's this? 6 this evening. Speaking of Unky, it's our collective favorite indie game from last year. Sifu, what's happening, Bully?
Sifu, so obviously it came out on the PS5 or PlayStation platforms last year. We've now got a release date for the Xbox consoles and Steam, along with the announcement of the Arenas expansion that is coming out on March 28th this year.
Let me ask you the big question, Bully. Please tell me, Game Pass? Is it day one to Game Pass?
It doesn't appear so at this point, although there's still a couple of weeks. But from what I've seen and what I was trying to do a bit of research before the show, and I think, I'd look at one news site that was saying, yes, it was going to come, and then the next one would say no. So conflicting reports there, but it's not listed as a release for this month on Game Pass. So unless something happens in the next couple of weeks.
Could this be a GoldenEye type reveal of a stealth drop of an awesome game straight into Game Pass?
Oh, potentially, but I would have thought if they're coming out and telling us that it's coming out on March 28th, that they would have had an accompanying release saying, yes, it's coming on Game Pass. But
not if you're stealth dropping it. You can't release that press statement until the 28th.
I guess we'll wait and see. And then the other news is apparently, if you're a Stinky Switch owner, it's coming out to that console in November this year. So, again,
enjoy the
good luck running it on that.
Second.
Yeah, because this is not a game that you need to be you need to be seeing what's going on at a fast rate of speed and reacting accordingly, is it?
No, you do not need the 60 frames a second to get your timings in. The game runs slow motion. Oh. My hope.
Well, mate, that might make it easier for me then. If it's running in slow motion, I'll have time to actually see what's coming and actually react to it. I don't know.
You'll think, what is it? Super Hot's come out, but it's not Super Hot. It's Sifu running at 6 frames a second on the Switch.
Super slow.
Super slow. Super hot. All right. Story, 6, 7? I've lost count. There's too many tabs open. This is a screenshot from my main account. I've hit the wrong button. That's not good, but that button should fix it. Oh, you can't quite see it, and I can't do anything to fix it because we've had some issues with it doesn't matter. What you can see there is the top of Roach. That's right. Roach now is a playable inflatable. He is your umbrella substitute in Fortnite. They've unlocked page 2 of the quest for Geralt of Rivia. There's 5 more unlockables. There's an emblem, there's a weapon skin, there's the banner thing, but the 4th one is Inflator Roach. That's right, your glider now can be Roach. You can swing in under him. And the final one is another skin for Geralt with the dark armor set, and it looks fantastic. Bully, have you gone hands-on with the new Geralt of Rivia quests in Fortnite?
Oh, look, we jumped on, what was it, a week and a half ago. I bought the Battle Pass thinking, oh, yeah, fantastic. I'll get the Witcher content. We played, 2 or 3 games. I haven't touched it since. So I should have known going into it that there was no way I was going to put the time and the effort into Fortnite playing this one. And I actually said... I said to you before the show, I might have to, given that I've outlaid for the Battle Pass and that, I might have to get the kids to jump on my account and unlock it for me.
Fair enough, mate. Well, I'm relatively confident you've got the remainder of this month. I believe the last day of this month is when it goes offline. So you've got 4 more weeks, mate, to get into it. I can certainly etch out some time if you want to do a live Let's Play or the like. But let's move on now to the new releases of this week, thanks to the Game Informer excellent website that we always go to. Mate, run us down that list, please.
Not a massive list. I know last week was a couple of pages long, so thankfully I'll try and do Unky some justice as we read through this. But number 1 is Destiny 2 Lightfall coming to the PlayStation and Xbox consoles. Funnily enough, it's still this Stadia as a release. I'm pretty sure that's died in the backside, and PC as well, February 28th. So that's out as of now. And I think that I didn't pay much attention to it. Was that the PS5 Plus game?
No, the last release, which Queen was it?
Oh, the last expansion.
The last expansion they added in, but not this one. So they just want you to buy.
Oh, there you go. No, fair enough. Look, I'm not a massive Destiny fan, so I probably can't speak to too much of that unless there's something you wanted to add, Troy.
I love the last expansion. The Witch Queen was phenomenal. That was my re-entry point into the series. I would love to check out Lightfall, but honestly, I think I'm saving my money now for the PSVR 2. Bully, what was next in the list?
Fair enough. We've got Dungeons of Aether on the PC. That was out on the February 28th as well. Don't know anything about that one. Scars Above on the PlayStation platforms, Xbox platforms, and PC, released on February 28th. I haven't had much of a look at that. It looks like a sort of Metroidvania type game, although I do know that Unky does have it, being the ginormous floating whale carcass that he is. So jump in, join us next week, because I've got no doubt that that'll be on our list of games that he has played, and we'll be able to tell us about that. We've got Street Fighter Duel coming out on the iOS and Android. Let's just skip past that. That's already out. We've got Leap coming out on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and PC March 1. So that's out as well. And as we discussed just before, Wolong Fallen Dynasty on the PlayStation platforms, Xbox platforms, and PC coming out tomorrow. And that one is most certainly on Game Pass. I've got it downloaded, pre-installed, and ready to rock when they finally unleash it on us.
Great work, mate. As you said, it is coming out to Xbox Game Pass. So the Let's Install will be up shot and briny tomorrow. I believe the game unlocks at 11. If not 11, it'll be 1 p.m. Whenever it unlocks, I'll get the Let's Install done and up for you. So keep your eyes on the channel for that one. But that is it for the news segment. So let's go off now to everybody's favorite segment. It is indeed time for the standoff.
Who will fight?
Bully, who will fight?
Who will fight today? Doppelgangers. We are asking, what is the best copied or imitated game that has lent heavily on another game? And just a little bit as a bit of further discussion point onto that one is, did they do anything better? And also, well, if they did do something better, was it actually a better game than the one that it was trying to copy off?
Very good. So the first entrant this week, man, I absolutely loved my time with this one and then never got back to finish it off. Bully, who's number one this week?
Number one, Immortals Phoenix Rising was a fairly early, I think it came out to the last gen platforms, but certainly a fairly early release for the new consoles. Basically, the best way to describe it, I would say, is it is it's based off of Zelda Breath of the Wild, is the one that we're saying is a doppelganger. It is pretty much the exact same game with a vast majority of the same mechanics, just set in a mythical Greece world.
It was very much the Ubisoft Assassin's Creed game in the Zelda format, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%, to the point where you even had, it wasn't just borrowing some of the mechanics, it was outright stealing them. They had, you had your stamina when you were climbing up things. They had the glide mechanic in there as well. You had a mount that you could get on. You had, various fruit that you could pick, although they didn't make you cook it up into a stew or something like that to get your stats up. But you'd pick fruit, and that was how you replenished your health or your magic and all that sort of stuff. To be honest, yes, it is the typical Ubisoft, let's bring up the map and see how many icons are on there that you've got to work your way through. But I really enjoyed it. I went through, I didn't platinum it or anything like that, but I certainly went through and finished it.
Oh, you rolled the credits?
And really,
okay.
Yeah, rolled the credits. And I really enjoyed it for what it was. It was, I think I've said in the past, I really enjoy, ancient myths and Greek myths and all that sort of stuff with the gods and the various ways that they interact with each other. And you've got all that in there. You've got all the gods that you're trying to help out, and you've got some of the evil ones that you're trying to fight against. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fantastic game. Yes, it's a blatant rip-off of Breath of the Wild, but let's be honest, if you're going to rip a game off, that's probably one that you want to rip off.
They absolutely nailed it, man. And to your point, I loved it and had every intention of rolling credits. This was just for me. I came to this game, I think it was a full 12 months after release. I picked it up at one of those Christmas sales. I think it was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, mate, but I believe this came out around the November period. And then I picked it up not that December, but the December following in the Christmas sales when the Game of the Year edition was, I don't know, $30 or whatever, the Ubisoft sale, $30. Picked up the gold edition, absolutely loved my time with it. But as I said, I was over a year past release, and there were so many other games that come out that I just never got back to it. But I loved my time with it. And to the question from the Standoff, did it do anything better? I actually really enjoyed the humor. I know a lot of people, the humor in this game didn't sit well with them, but for me, I was chuckling constantly at the things they were saying. I thought it was a solidly done, to your point, mythical yet very humorous game. How did you take the comedy in it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was all just part of it. I think is that they did, in my opinion, as I said before, it's quite clearly a rip-off of Zelda, but I think there was enough differentiating points, and the humour is one of them, exactly as you mentioned, that there's enough differentiating points to Zelda that it was interesting enough in its own right. And yes, there was the humour and the banter between your character and the gods and how you go about that, but there was also, some of the different quests that you did and stuff like that just made it, in my opinion, enough of a variation that it wasn't a carbon copy, but it was, quite heavily relying on it. And yeah, as I said, really enjoyed it. Just having a look there, it looked December 2020 is when it came out. So
there you go.
Not long after the release of the
new gen consoles.
Of the actual current gen consoles. So about a month after that.
Yeah, nice. And just watching this footage is exciting me enough to the point of like, geez, I think after we go off air tonight with G.E.A, I think I'm going to reinstall this game because I never finished it. And I enjoyed even just the little puzzles all throughout. I can't remember what they were called. They weren't Merlin trials. That was, of course, from Hogsworth. But whatever the little trials were with all the marbles and everything, I loved all those. I really do want to get back to this game. I think that's done it. After the show tonight, I'm going to go back hands-on. Number 2, now, Bully, spoiler alert, you're going to have to really work if you want to win anything else to win other than Game Entrant 2 tonight. Here we go. Rock Band, and one of my favorites, the old Shine by Collective Souls here. Check out some of my fingerwork. I'll have you know this was but 3 months ago, me playing on expert guitar here. I'll let you just enjoy this as you reminisce for me, as of course, Rock Band was the doppelganger of the original Guitar Hero. Was that your entry point, mate?
Yeah, Guitar Hero. I'm trying to think which one came out on the Xbox 360 because you had the releases.
2.
Yeah, so you had the couple of releases on the PS2 console. So, Guitar Hero was my first one. I really enjoyed Guitar Hero, and then, funnily enough, my wife and I were going overseas at one point at about the time that they'd released Rock Band over in the US, and that obviously came with the drum kit and the guitar, and was there another?
There was a mic, guitar,
and the microphone. Yes, so they'd released that over in the US. They hadn't released it in Australia yet, and it was going to be a little while before they did. And as it so happens, we managed to walk into a store over there, purchased one for us and one for one of my friends that wanted one as well, and got quite the looks as we were strolling back through San Diego with 2 Rock Band sets under our arms, and even stranger looks when we walked onto the plane at LA Airport and tried to fly back to Australia with them. So that's probably my biggest memory of Rock Band. The other one which the other memory that I have really of both of them is, that was sort of early to mid-20s I was at that point, and just having groups of friends around, having a drink, having a laugh, everyone, and especially when by the time you got to the Rock Band, everyone could do something different. You had your drums, if you wanted to sing, do the guitar, it sort of expanded that world a lot more so that everyone could sort of get involved and do something with it. So as much as it took well, I shouldn't say took liberties. When you talk about Immortals, Phoenix Rising taking Zelda, this is there's no. It didn't just take from it. It literally just did the exact same thing, rebranded and put out some more peripherals with it. But just the expanded experience, I think, is what made it for me in terms of expanding on the Guitar Hero. And then, obviously after that, Guitar Hero responded with their own drum set and microphone and expanded the games out in that sense as well. So, and I know what your thoughts are on it. It's one of your all-time favourites, and I'm surprised you're not sitting there with a guitar in your hand right now.
Oh, my fingers are going, believe me. I just want to shout out the thing that Rock Band did better than Guitar Hero is the actual guitar they released for Rock Band 4 that came out on the Xbox One. That guitar was the best wireless guitar they ever released, and I to this day still play it, and it's just phenomenal. So shout out to the actual peripheral that came with it. The games, of course, you could interchange, but the actual peripheral, I think, on Rock Band was done better. Number 3 this evening, Bully, Darksiders.
Darksiders. So that was bit of a combination of where it's got its inspiration or its doppelgangerness. And just before I continue, I should say I've just been corrected by Unky Dunky in the chat there. It's not doppelgangers, it's doppelgamers. I misread it there. So he's a bit of a player on words. Apologies from massacring your standoff there, Unky. So hopefully you're back next week and you can run us through it. But Darksiders took a little bit of inspiration from God of War in terms of the combat, but it also took a lot of inspiration from the Zelda franchises, and essentially the way the world worked is very much akin to Zelda in that you would go into a dungeon or a certain area, you'd work your way through it, you would find a collectible or an item that would then allow you to traverse the remainder of that dungeon. And then once you got back into the overworld, it would then allow you to move on to the next area by using that piece of equipment or whatever it was. So relied heavily on both of those. I think it did a pretty good job. I think it's pretty much maligned sort of game. It's had three releases, I think, plus a
there is definitely Darksiders 3.
Yeah, so there was 3 releases, but there was also a top-down isometric one that was released. That was the latest release, which didn't really gel with me. I didn't spend a lot of time looking at that one, but
that
certainly
one didn't even cross my radar. I didn't know that had been released.
Yeah, so there you go. It shows how much
marketing was
how
in
much
it.
people thought of that one, but or marketing as well. But certainly the mainline Darksiders games, fantastic games, and the first one has you playing as basically one of the gods of war in the underworld and trying to free your brothers, if I remember the story correctly. It's been a while since I've played it, but
yeah,
I thought it was a really fantastic game for what it was. It was really underrated, but and I don't. Number 2 and 3 really didn't capture me as much, but certainly the first one I put a heck of a lot of time into because of those elements that you had. It had great combat and it had the Zelda type, progression system, I guess is probably the best way to explain it.
I always felt they were really going for that God of War melee feel to the combat, but for my mind, they never even matched God of War's melee combat feel. You could see them going for it. You could see it was a huge influence, but to my money, the original God of War melee combat still holds it over Darksiders. Standoff entrant 4 this week, Bully. Diddy Kong Racing, the one that that I never touched. Mario Kart, though. I can talk about that till the cows come home, mate.
Well, I know we touched on Diddy Kong Racing a couple of weeks ago when we spoke about the N64 multiplayer experiences, but obviously took heavy experience or influence, I should say, from Mario Kart itself. Essentially, it's a kart racing game. It is what it is on the Nintendo 64. They just sort of expanded on what the game was, though. So instead of just jumping into a Grand Prix and you have a series of races, they had an overworld that you could maneuver around in. They had secrets within that overworld. And then it wasn't just a kart racer itself. So you had the hovercraft and you had the planes that you could race in as well. So there was in my opinion, as much as they took inspiration from Mario Kart, they really did enough to differentiate it from Mario Kart itself and make it really its own sort of thing, to the point where I think there was that little bit of disagreement the last time we spoke about it, that Unky and I both thought it was actually the superior game to Mario Kart in the end.
Well, I believe it actually won the standoff that time.
I think that's the only time that. I do remember that, because I think that's the only time that anybody's actually sided with my my winner. So I've got that etched, I've got that photographed, I've got that up on the wall as the only standoff I've actually won.
That one's in Bully's pool room. All right, standoff entry 5. Now try and wrap your eyes around Shadow of Mordor. Man, I can see the the PlayStation prompts here, and they're throwing me because I only ever played this on Xbox, I think, mate.
I'm trying to think which ones I think it was PS4 I played it on, but the biggest doppelganger for this one is the actual combat itself. That the parry system and the dodge system that they took from Batman Arkham games, and the way that sort of works when you got multiple enemies coming at you, and you get that little indication just above your head as someone's about to strike you from behind, and you can either dodge or parry or use that sort of maneuver in terms of dealing with the combat. Again, really, really fantastic game. It sort of came out of nowhere as well, because by that stage, the Lord of the Rings movies themselves had sort of come and gone and were in the rearview mirror, and it was almost, from my point of view, a really unexpected sort of thing that came out almost 10 years, I think, or thereabouts, after the last movie was released.
Yeah, I'd buy that, yep.
Yeah, so again, fantastic game, and the other thing it had was the much vaunted Nemesis system, which Warner Brothers patented and told us all about, and then never used it again.
It hasn't been used again, but you raise a great point. Unky's question, did it do anything better? You would argue the Nemesis system is the +1 that Batman could have used itself. That's a great point. I think I can see Unky's logic here.
If you combine the two, so you've got the combat, but that was probably what made it a bit more personable, was that Nemesis system, because when you were going through the combat, you'd sort of go, oh, that's the orc or whoever it was that beat me, the last 3 times. I've got to get him. But every time he'd beat you, he'd also get stronger. So you sort of form. It was a really weird feeling. You sort of form this hatred towards a certain character or an NPC for no other reason.
Yeah.
And he wasn't involved in the story at all, so it had nothing to do with that. But the fact that he kept beating you and getting stronger because of it, you started to take that personally, and you want to go back and get him. So those two things combined, I think the combat plus the making the combat relevant to rather than just going and hacking orcs left, right, and center, it actually made it, as I said, more personable.
Yeah, great call, man. I love it. All right, entrance 6 this week is who?
Entrance 6, Cuphead, which is heavily influenced or doppelgangered, I keep saying that, doppelgamered from Contra on the NES, the run and gun style games. Influenced heavily from that. What does it do better? Literally everything. Anybody that's ever, don't get me wrong, the old Contra games are good. They were as hard as nails. And I know Cuphead's not much better, but those Contra games on the NES were, if you think Cuphead's hard, go back and play some of those. They are brutal. I think that was the origins of the old Konami code.
Yes.
That most people, I think the only way that they could ever beat those games on those systems was to use the old Konami code. So at least Cuphead gives you a bit of a fighting chance. But what does it do better than Contra? As I said, it's probably a hard comparison because they're basically 30 years apart. But graphically, fantastic. Control-wise, fantastic. The upgrade skills or trees that you've got, fantastic. And the enemy design, as good as Contra was, it was generic sort of enemies, whereas you basically every second level in Cuphead is a memorable boss battle with fantastic visuals and design and the different ways that you got to fight them as well.
Yeah, the one I can throw out as well is the old arcade stick. Can confirm I can get it working for Cuphead on the Xbox Series X, but I've never had the arcade stick working for Contra. Unless now, Bully, this is one to scratch your head at. Did they ever do an Xbox, 360 or the like release of Contra? Could I maybe fire it up on the Xbox Series X and get the arcade stick working on it?
I don't know if they did a release of the original games, but there was Contra Rogue Core, I think it was, which was an absolute pile of trash. That was released. I'm just having a look through now. That was September 2019 that was released, and that was terrible. So we won't even count that as a Contra game. So you might be able to get it. You might be able to get it on some of the arcade, Xbox Arcade. I think I don't know if that still exists on the 360, but or hopefully at some point they might release it on the Nintendo Switch Online library for the NES.
You never know. We might get a Cowabunga type collection of Contra. There was a few Contra games back in the day, weren't there? 1, 2, and 3, if memory serves.
There was a few, and then it depended on the US market and the Japanese market that they had variations on the title that were in essence Contra games, but they were retitled. I think it was a Probot Tector or something along those lines.
Oh, you're out of my wheelhouse now. I got no idea.
Oh, I think there was a Contra game that was released, and it was called Probot Tector in the European market, if I recall correctly. It was essentially Contra, but you were reskinned as a robot, and it was just to get around their
licensing.
Well, not so much the licensing; it was more just the age restrictions on the games. It was okay. It was okay to fight robots, but similar sort of thing. It was okay to fight robots, but it wasn't okay to fight people, sort of thing.
Fair enough. All right, Entrance 7. Ooh, now I did enjoy a bit of Neo myself, and of course, referencing Dark Souls.
Yes, Neo did take heavily from the difficulty of Dark Souls, but it did enough different, I think, in terms of you had different combat stances and you had different fighting mechanics as opposed to Dark Souls has more or less got the same fighting mechanics. It's just determined by what sort of weapon you're holding and what your stats are in relation to that.
But yeah, whereas these guys added the stances, high, mid, low.
Yeah, so they sort of mixed it up a little bit. I think Unky, I'm not sure how far he got into the first one, but I know he spent a fair bit of time with it. I probably did about 15 hours, and it was just one of those ones that, similar to Elden Ring, which I've spoken to in the past, is I really enjoyed it for what it was. I can see that it's a good game, but it just becomes brutally difficult to the point where I just don't want to spend that time belting my head against the wall by going up against the same enemy, 50 times, because I just can't beat it. But in terms of what it did better, I think
the spirit animals is what jumps to mind for me.
Yeah, so I can't remember the spirit animals. I just remember the different combat stances with how they did the fighting. So in terms of what they did better for mine, that's probably one thing to look at.
Yeah, well, for me, it was, as I said, the spirit animals. I can't even remember what the recharge mechanic was for it, but there was some action you undertook, and then after X amount of doing it, you'd filled up, and then you could summon in your wolf or whatever and have a co-op companion. Well, not a co-op companion, but you know what I mean. NPC fighting alongside you. But Neo, strong entrant. I loved it. Number 8 this week is what?
And number 8 is Fortnite, a doppelganger of PUBG, the original sort of battle royale. And Fortnite, what did it do better? Let's be honest. I think most people these days forget what PUBG was, and Fortnite's a thing and a universe all of its own that's just continued to plow on and infiltrate not only the gaming sphere, but certainly,
pop culture.
Primary school kids know about it. My kids in primary school know about it. It's infiltrated into, even to the point of stores where you've got merchandise that goes with it. You've got Nerf guns that go with it. You've got, apparel that goes with it.
Yep.
And then that's all on top of the in-game currency that you have to actually buy to get the cosmetics, and we spoke before about some of the with Geralt and The Witcher being thrown in there. But over the years, they've had unknown, or I don't play it that often, but the amount of content in terms of cosmetics that they put in there since release, it just continues to go on. And I think I joked a couple of weeks ago is that anything that ends up being big mainstream is almost a guarantee to find a skin in Fortnite at some point down the track.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge fan of Fortnite. What did it do better than PUBG? Everything, as you said, but I think their golden ticket's got to be the monetization strategy. Everything that Fortnite ended up engineering and manufacturing, mainly, looking at you, the Battle Pass. Every man and his dog now does the Battle Pass. But of course, Fortnite, with the origin story of the Battle Pass, they've nailed it absolutely. I love everything about it. I still play it to this day, as we've alluded to earlier. All right. Standoff entrant number 9 this week, Bully.
Number 9 is Forza Motorsport, and the doppelganger gamer there is Gran Turismo. I'm not sure in terms of what it's done better. I think is the Horizon series. So you've got Forza Motorsport, the mainline series, is pretty much in essence step for step in beat with Gran Turismo itself. You've got unlocking vehicles, you've got racetracks, you've got the various view modes. They both look fantastic, and each iteration just looks more and more realistic as you're going along. So those two are fairly much in lockstep. I think what differentiates the two of them, and what I think they've done better, is expanding it into that open world and having Forza Horizon, where you can literally jump into a car and you have this massive open world environment where you can drive around and go anywhere and do anything. You can find races, you can find other people to race against. There's challenges, there's collectibles, there's all that sort of stuff. So I know that a lot of people do have open world fatigue to some point, and maybe this is not for you, but certainly it is a massive point of difference in between the two series.
And the only other point of difference I'll make is that the main menu music in Forza Motorsport is far superior to the chintzy music on display in Gran Turismo. I give that one a hard pass. But I love me some Forza Motorsport. I've been going back this week, actually, news to everyone. Forza 4, I've been going back and cleaning up a lot of the achievements in Forza 4. I don't know why, but for some unknown reason, I've gotten, it's probably the arthritis in the hands, doesn't get fired up on the steering wheel, but I've had the steering wheel out this week many nights, and I've just been cutting laps around that open world, knocking over the signposts and speeding past the cameras and setting all sorts of records. I love me some Forza Motorsport. A clear winner in that race to me, Forza Motorsport every day of the week. All right. Standoff entry 10 and everyone's favorite in-game weapon ever, the dubstep gun.
So we're looking at Saints Row, quite clearly a doppelganger of the Grand Theft Auto series. It came out, I think the first one came out in 2006 or 7.
2006
the first
sounds
Saints
right
Row.
to my ear.
Yeah, so that was, what are we talking about, 4 or 5 years after GTA 3 come out, and we'd obviously had Vice City and San Andreas by that stage.
I feel like 4 had come out as well, GTA 4, hadn't it?
That was 2008.
Oh, well, strike me wrong.
For mine, was it?
Sure.
2007. So 2006 was Saints Row, the original, and then 2007 I think was GTA 4. But in any event, quite clearly, it's gotten more and more outlandish the more Saints Row games have come out, to the point where they're almost unrecognisable to the first one in some sense. But the original Saints Row itself was a carbon copy for what GTA was throwing out at the time. You had your little gang that you got inducted into, and then it was just about committing crime to get money back to that gang to have bigger influence across the city and expand your empire, essentially. So, it didn't really do much, but different in terms of what GTA was doing at the time. From my point of view, what did it do better? I think it was that section, the fact that there was a little bit more than just playing through a story. There was, in GTA, you always had, side activities you can do and various things that you can engage in. But the fact that you were basically stockpiling money out of it, and that was your way of expanding your way across the city and battling against rival gangs was to, basically expand your empire by getting money into your gang and going that way. Just gave it a little bit of an extra sort of impetus to do those side missions and that sort of stuff. Is probably where I'd say they did it better. But you're obviously competing. You're obviously competing against Grand Theft Auto, which is one of the biggest game franchises of all time. So it's hard to go up against it, I would have thought.
It is, but where I'd like to shine a light on is their to what you were saying, the side mission stuff, but specifically the insurance fraud ones where you'd run down the street, pull the double triggers, go into ragdoll mode, and then just bounce off the hood of every vehicle that you could. I absolutely love it to this day. That I still want GTA to incorporate, pull back from Saints Row and put that insurance fraud ragdoll mode in. It's, obviously now it feels like it's straight out of Goat Simulator, but I was going to say insurance fraud for me.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that, but I was going to say you could almost throw another doppelganger in there in Burnout series where you had that crash mode. That's almost what they were doing with that insurance fraud, was that you'd run into an area and it was how much you could bounce off things and continue that chain going.
Yes.
Before you came to a rest, which was almost straight out of the Burnout series.
Yeah, 100% correct. So big fan of it, but I don't think it can take the biscuits over GTA. As you said, man, that thing is a force unto itself. So shout out to the dubstep gun, shout out to the insurance fraud, but I don't think it's going to win tonight's standoff. I'm going to go back to number 2. Renominate Collective Souls Shine. What a song. And of course, the game is Rock Band 4. For my money, this is the superior version of Guitar Hero. Bully, where are you sitting this week?
Oh, look, I could sit here and make comment. I've probably half a dozen of them, and there is no way I'm going to convince you to move away from Rock Band in any way, shape, or form. So I'll throw up my hands. I'll cast my vote over to you, and for probably the only second time in standoff history, I'm going to put another plaque on the wall that I've picked a winner.
Beautiful work, Rock Band. Our winner is you. Bully, that brings us over to the final segment, audience integration. Now, I appreciate, mate, you have been doing a lot of heavy lifting this episode, being the only co-host that you've not really had a lot of time to dart off into that YouTube chat. But, mate, now's your time. Any highlights you'd like to surface for us from that there live YouTube chat as we've been going?
Oh, look, I have been trying to jump in there, and I did apologise halfway through because it was becoming a little too much for me, trying to read the comments in there while keeping up with what you were saying and not ending up sitting here looking dumbfounded as to what was going on at the time. But thanks to everyone that did jump in the chats. We've got Sean Games, Tigaro as per usual, the two guys in there. Sean Games, he's off to see Cocaine Bear tomorrow. I can't think of anything worse than that. Movie looks absolutely horrendous. So please, Sean, let us know next week what your thoughts are after you've gone to see it.
Do you know, Bully, is that based on a true story? I feel like I read somewhere it was.
Oh, I think that was part of the marketing gimmick, is that they're saying based on a true story. I think that's much in the same of Talladega Nights, based on a true story. Yeah, okay, well, I don't think it is, but you can tell us it is, and have your funnies from there, I guess.
Very good.
So there we go. We've got those guys in there. Sean Games was just throwing a bit of info about the Last of Us HBO show. He loved the Mortal Kombat scene and the soundtrack. Yeah. That he thought was
that 80s
fantastic.
Was killer.
Although the only thing I will say with the Mortal Kombat scene is, given that they wouldn't have, or that was the first time that Ellie had ever played video games, and again I forget the other girl's name that she was with, but she had spent a bit of time in the arcade. But how have they learned how to do the fatalities? That's my question to you.
Well, Ellie, isn't she a buff? I don't believe she'd ever played it, to your point, but I believe she's got the poster on her wall, and I believe there's a reference in one of the episode. It might have been her with and I'm blanking on his name, the younger brother was deaf, and they were going through, I believe, didn't they have a strategy guide for Mortal Kombat 2 in that episode? Wasn't that a throwaway reference, I feel?
Oh, there you go. You might have got me on that one, but that was what I was just sort of sitting there thinking, that, hang on, the incident happened when she was very young, and where has she played these before? I'm not quite sure, and I sort of got the feeling that she was that impressed at being able to actually play it for the first. And my opinion was it was the first time that's where she really got the most enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, it was definitely her first time playing, but I feel like there was a reference to either a game manual or a strategy guide, either in no, it must have been that episode with the deaf kid in the childcare center in the sewers of whichever town that was.
Oh, there you go. I might have to go back and have a look at it again. And Unky Dunky's managed to jump in there, as I mentioned. He's corrected me on his doppelgamers. Apologies, Dunky. Come back next week, please, and relieve me of this. And I'm just trying to think. Tigaro was jumping in there and providing me with updates for the cricket score. So thank you very much for that, because I've got
because you didn't have enough to think about this week.
Well, no, I've got 4 screens sitting in front of me, and not one of them's got the cricket on, which is very much not like me. So I was very appreciative of him providing me the cricket updates. Although I have managed to get it up just as we've jumped into that. And what are we? 8 wickets we've got, and they're about 60 runs in front. So we'll see how we go with that. I might be staying up a bit later tonight just to round out that one. Keeping going through the chat, we've got there you go. Unky's reinstalled Immortals Phoenix Rising, and we're playing it again this week. And we've got Zombie Massacre, who did drop a comment in one of the videos last week, but he's asking
Scary Undertaker, wasn't he?
There you go. You've hit it on the head, because he said, "Troy, do you remember me? I am Scary Undertaker?" ?
Yeah,
so there you go. You do remember. Well, the old Scary Undertaker, who's the new Zombie Massacre, has jumped in there.
Thank you, Zombie Massacre, for coming back. I appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks for jumping in there. And we've got David Cohen again, who's jumped in the last couple of chats. Welcome back again to David. And he, a couple of things there. He's said that Geek Aloud's addicted to achievements. I'm not sure that was me. He might have been making a comment on you. So I go through my waves with achievements. Sometimes I get really addicted to it and want to, do everything in a game. And then other times I just think it's all too much, and I just end up playing games that I don't want to play just for the sake of getting
I've been
trophies.
addicted to it since day one, and still am. I bloody love them. Sign me up for achievements.
It's funny. I'll tell you a story, because I used to have an Xbox that wasn't connected to the internet, and I used to play games on that. And once I'd gone through and got a whole bunch of achievements, I'd restart the game, wipe the console back to its base state, and then I could go and get the achievements again, or they'd pop again.
Nice.
So that was my way of doing it. And he's just saying as well, David, as well, that the problem with Saints Row is the last game, the reboot, was outsourced to a different team, and the reboot haven't gone hands-on with it. I know Unky has, but I don't think any of us were overly favourable towards it in terms of its respecting the roots of where it came from, I guess.
Yeah, no, I played it. I went hands-on. I enjoyed what they've done with it. It was better than the mainstream absolutely lampooned it. I didn't think it was that bad, but I can confirm the main core, your sort of 3, I think it was, best friends that were making up the core of the game, whinges to the last one of them, and I couldn't wait to get away from. But when you weren't stuck next to their whinging, it was still an enjoyable game, well implemented under the hood. It was enjoyable, but I think that'll do it for this week. Bully.
Well, just before we jump, I was going to say again, a big thank you again to Tigaro for throwing in a contribution to the Unky Dunky Pastry Fund there. So again, very much appreciated, and hopefully you're getting some value out of your money for what you're watching. And thank you to everyone for jumping in the chat. And as we said at the top of the show, make sure you jump onto Twitter at Geek Aloud, regular updates there with the videos that we're dropping, as well as the updates that we've got on YouTube.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Bully, as I said, mate, heavy lifting from you this week. You were carrying far more than your fair share, mate. So big shout out to you. Thank you. Tigaro, contributions always welcome. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. We are off duty.
off duty. And I will say this just before you go, Troy, because I've got it in the chat there, and I'll jump in before you do. What else can you do with the channel? You can like it, you can subscribe it, and this is from Unky Dunky. You'll never miss it.
Oh, that was luck. Hey, that's something. Old Uncle Donkey. Gee, Donkey.